Hello, I'm Haeju from Go Inside Global.
Hello, I'm Haley Koo.
When experiencing stress, anger, anxiety, or fear, everyone reacts differently.
When we force ourselves to suppress our anger, we may consume spicy food or even alcohol, but sometimes we may end up exploding. Both options aren't good choices to make.
It is because there is a high possibility of hurting ourselves, others, and or both. Meditation helps us see reality clearly and respond wisely. Ultimately, it brings happiness and peace.
Here at Go Inside Global, we look for paths to happiness and peace of mind by talking to various teachers that specializes in meditation across the globe. Dr. Lobsang Tenzin Negi is a professor in the Department of Religion at Emory University and the director of the Center for Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics. He developed CBCT, Cognitively Based Compassion Training, and C-Learning, Social, Emotional, and Ethical Learning, focusing on the connection between emotional states and physical social well-being. A former Tibetan monk, Dr. Negi has pioneered innovative programs such as the Emory-Tibet Science Initiative, which teaches modern science to Tibetan monks, and C-Learning, a K-12 educational framework. He is also the founder and spiritual director of the Drepung Losuling Monastery in Atlanta. In collaboration with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Emory University operates groundbreaking educational programs through the Center for Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics. These initiatives bring Buddhist principles into modern education and research.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's so nice to be with you. And Ansang Anyang Hanyo Hansayo.
안녕하세요.
For everyone.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Professor. So is this your first visit to Korea? And what have been your memorable experiences so far?
Actually, it's not my first visit. I was here twice before. My first visit was in 1995, long time ago.
Wow.
And at the time, I was still a Buddhist monk.
Oh, yeah.
And I was here with related to teachings,
Right.
and had the opportunity to visit some of the most beautiful temples in the countryside of Korea. You know, my memory of Korea, you know, particularly is about those beautiful, so serene and peaceful surrounding temple, and also the beautiful people. You know, just I could not forget that how hospitable, how beautiful, you know, just people are here, so kind.
Thank you.
Great.
Great. Do you think your experiences in Korea is different from you being a monk and now you are a professor?
Yes and no. in some sense, yes, it is different. In the sense, when I came here as a monk, I was, you know, involved in Buddhist teachings. But this time, I'm here not to teach particularly about Buddhism, but it's Buddhist related, but in a secular context. So it's a different nature of work that I'm doing.
Yeah. So you are visiting Korea for CBCT program, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us despite your busy schedule. And could you please greet our BTN viewers and those interested in meditation?
Yes, I'm here actually this time and last year also related to CBCT, which is cognitively based compassion training. And it's a meditation training. We called it compassion training, but it's a meditation. And when we think about the meditation, you know, sometimes there is a misconception that meditation is just about sitting and emptying the mind. But the meditation is really, it's about training. You know, like if you replace the meditation as training, what do we do when we train in sports, music, or any other skills? We practice again and again, right? So meditation, known as bhavana in Sanskrit, or gom in Tibetan, it carries this meaning of cultivation, cultivating certain skills, but also the gom Tibetan word, it refers to familiarization, that reinforcing, visiting it again and again. So meditation in that sense is a process by which we enhance inner skills like attention, mindfulness, compassion. So it's about cultivating and enhancing inner skills.
Yeah, cultivating the skills.
Right. That takes a lot of patience.
Yes,
right?
yes. That's why we call that training, not the kind of meditation practice.
Right. Yeah. The training, it implies it's not just happening, but you are engaging in a certain, intentional ways to enhance, whether it's compassion, whether it is you are developing mindfulness or attention. It's an active engagement in enhancing those qualities.
I see. So, do you think you could introduce the Center for the Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics?
Yes,
It's quite long.
thank
It
you.
is quite long.
It's a long name and a mouthful, but it's not the compassion-based, but the center, right? The
Right.
Center
Yeah.
for Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics. So it is a center at Emory University. It was established actually way back about 25 years ago in 1998. At the time, as a program, it was referred to as Emory-Tibet Partnership. But over the years, it has evolved, and now it's called Center for Contemplative Science and Compassion-Based Ethics, or its short name is Emory Compassion Center.
That's so
Now-
much
Compassion
easier.
Center is easier.
Compassion.
It's a compassion center, compassion-based ethics. So at this center, we offer a number of programs. We have 3 signature programs. One of them is, of course, CBCT, this cognitively based compassion training.
Right.
The other 2 are Emory-Tibet Science Initiative. It's about bringing modern science to Tibetan monks and nuns in a very systematic way to learn and to make it more sustainable. It's a comprehensive science program for Tibetan monks and nuns. And then the other one is what is referred to C-learning, or social, emotional, and ethical learning. This is our most recent but most extensive form of program at our center.
Right. So one of the programs that you mentioned, I believe it was the second one, the Comprehensive Modern Science Curriculum, was created by the invitation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Can you tell us more about how the program was developed and your karmic ties with His Holiness?
Thank you for asking this question. It's really important and near and dear to me, as you mentioned that this program was developed at Emory University at the invitation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. As you may know, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been very involved in what we may call really a new, very innovative way of bringing science and spirituality, science and religion, or science and spirituality together, the convergence of science and spirituality. So in this effort, you have to, on the one hand, inform scientists about the spirituality, this, meditations, like the spiritual qualities like compassion and love, forgiveness, gratitude, these qualities. On the other hand, for the contemplative communities like the monasteries and nunneries, he wanted for them to study modern science, not just to become the 21st century monastics, which is very important. If they were to convey their teachings to the larger world, if it is conveyed with the understanding and within the context of what we know today scientifically, that would be much more practical and relevant for our audiences today. But most importantly, the reason His Holiness wanted to bring science education in the curriculum, not just a few introductions, not like that. A very kind of comprehensive and systematic, that's something sustainable program that he wanted to bring to the monasteries and nunneries is because he believes that the Buddhist tradition, that has a lot to offer when it comes to cultivating those inner skills. Those are very important for our peace, well-being. You mentioned about, how the world today is in turmoil with a lot of wars, rising mental health problems, the growing divide between different factions, whether politically or religious or socioeconomic basis. Inner qualities like love, compassion, our being more mindful, these are so important for well-being, for happiness, for peace, or to survive, the humanity to survive. As His Holiness himself says, that love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. And so with that kind of understanding, His Holiness is very aware that there is a huge role for the Buddhists, and particularly the contemplative scholars, those who are immersed in study and practice of these contemplative practices, to contribute to the knowledge, and through that, then more holistic, more complete knowledge about human condition can only benefit the humanity. So that's why he wanted to bring modern science into monasteries. Back in the 90s, that he began in the 90s, bringing some, professors and others to an institution called Library of Tibetan Works and Archives in Dharamsala. They started giving some ad hoc workshops in different monasteries, nunneries, and that was really the beginning in the 90s, late 90s. But then in 2006, His Holiness realizing that for this endeavor to be really sustainable and a meaningful and sustainable program, it needed an institutional engagement. So since His Holiness had already established this relationship with Emory back in 1998 with the formation of Emory-Tibet Partnership, and the Emory-Tibet Partnership had already developed CBCT, this cognitive-based compassion training, doing research and like that. His Holiness invited us, Emory University, to create the curriculum and to actually offer, it's very kind of long-term project. And that's where we began, in 1998. So for me, this program was really important, as I mentioned, as you mentioned, that having some karmic connection. I do feel, very fortunate to have the connection with His Holiness. I don't know if I was actually brought to Dharamsala when I was 14 from very remote region in the Himalayas, by His Holiness, asking of His Holiness to a monk to bring some young kids from the Himalayas, very, very remote, If I hadn't gone there, I probably would have been just in the mountains, still, maybe a shepherd or doing the farming work, which is important. But because of that opportunity that His Holiness had provided, that I ended up in Dharamsala, and then His Holiness put me at the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, and then eventually to Drepung Losling Monastery, which is in South India for more advanced studies. So, science program, this is a program. It began in 2006, just really kind of, figuring out what would be the curriculum that would actually be fitting for the monastic, because the monastics, on the one hand, are very sophisticated in their analytical thinking. They reason, the epistemology, and they study very, very, kind of the using advanced form of logic and reasoning to understand, the reality. You mentioned about the reality earlier, that it's about, reality, to it becoming more unaware of the actual actual nature. But at the same time, in the Tibetan monastic education, there has not been any modern science education, not even mathematics, like that. So it was a challenge, how do you bring science education to a population very sophisticated in their analytical thinking, in their use of logic and reasoning, the conceptual kind of reasoning and like that, but at the same time don't have mathematics, which is the language of science. If you think about the, starting with the physics, without mathematics, it would be harder. So our center, at the time partnership, had to bring a lot of the scholars who were informed in both modern education, science education, and the Tibetan monastic training. People like Geshe Tenzin, His Holiness is long-term English principal, English translator, or Alan Wallace, who had studied in the monasteries, but also with the PhD from the West, or George Dreyfus, a Geshe, first Western Geshe person to achieve this degree, Geshe Laram, and then also to have the PhD and then to become a professor. People like that, but as well as like the scholars from Tibetan tradition, like Geshe Yeshe Tafkil, a very senior and incredible scholar, and like Geshe Lhatra and like that, from the director of the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. So we spent some time to really, and then my colleague, Tundra Sampella, who has been very critical in this program from the very beginning, and now he actually serves all three the signature programs at our center. So for 2 years we spent how to do that, and then we brought about 38 for the first cohort from different monasteries and nunneries in Dharamsala, and the next year another cohort, 50 some, altogether 90 some monastics. For 5 years we did the pilot testing. Our science faculty at Emory created the curriculum, 5-year curriculum, each year that you create and then test it on them. And then after 5 years, then you revise it, and then realizing that we need to have an introduction, that to 1 year just introduction when we take this in big monasteries and nunneries. So they added an introductory course in the, so this program had physics, biology, neuroscience, and philosophy of science. 6-year program it became. It was implemented in 2014 in 9 monasteries.
Wow.
Some of these are very big. That they, like the Tepung has about 4,500 monks. Maybe close to 5,000 monks. Tepung, yes. So like that, and then so this program is now part of the core curriculum, along with the traditional Buddhist studies in areas of Buddhist philosophy, like the contemplative science, psychology, Buddhist psychology, and other areas.
Wow, I heard that also the monasteries also participate in some research.
Yes, so that's like this year in May, this group of monks and nuns, who are in this 4th stage of our education, the science education, was called the sustainability phase. The first was kind of we're exploring, the formation, development. Second was the pilot, trying it. Third, implementation, the 6 year throughout the year. Therefore, all the, from a certain grade of their learning, they have to study all this. And then now the sustainable, to make it sustainable, we have to train, some monks and nuns in science pedagogy, how to teach, and then also to science methodology, the research methodology, and do research. So this year in May, we had this conference in Dharamsala, where the monastics who did the research, for example, on lucid dreaming.
Yeah, lucid dreaming.
Actual research together with Ken Parler. He is a world-renowned scientist in lucid dreaming. He's at the Northwestern University, and Robin Nuslock, who is a neuroscientist. Then Nicole Gerald at Emory University. They are doing research, using the gadgets to measure brain, that noticing that when they are in the dream, that what's happening to the changes in the brain and so forth and so on. So, but also, that they are doing research. If you practice compassion, what changes do you see? Not just self-reported way, that how you feel, but actually to see what changes in your body and the brain are taking place, and like that. Even like the some of the research projects some monks and nuns did was on the shunyata, the emptiness. It's a very advanced Buddhist concept, right? The ultimate reality, as referred to as the shunyata. Right? That's the ultimate understanding. That is the ultimate wisdom that frees from us from the ignorance, right?
But it's very hard to prove or demonstrate it.
Yeah, so that's the thing that the long until quite recently, I should say, research on this inner states was difficult because there was not enough technology to do that. Science had not evolved. So that's why in the 80s, even for the scientists, even to study about emotions, that was a taboo. If some scientists, the reputable science were to do research on emotions, they thought that they are kind of gone, sideways, And then the consciousness, the consciousness, even until most recently, that was not the topic that scientists would dare touching. But then there are many, and the meditations and like that. But now we have the, science is growing, evolving, right? So that more sophisticated machines, they cannot directly tell that you are what the experience of emptiness is like. I mean, this is subjective experience, right? But you can measure the correlation with when somebody is in that state, what's happening to their brain, which regions are lighting up, what changes in the their chemical and the other hormonal and the biochemical flows, that what changes are happening, and through that you can study the benefits of meditation.
So it's on the process to measure the emptiness state, the state of the emptiness.
Yeah, there's some group of monks, they created a research project based on meditation emptiness. That when it comes to the understanding or the experience of reality, the emptiness, ultimate reality, it's in Buddhist tradition also, it's not just one thing, right? The reality is understood at different levels. So for example, there is a school called Chittamatra, the mind-only school, that is one of the Mahayana philosophical schools. And then you have the Madhyamika, middle way Buddhist school, and their level of understanding of emptiness is more, as understood as it's more, profound. And so in the monasteries, the monks and nuns, they study this, right? So then when they study, there is a phase when their focus is on Chittamatra, in this mind-only school of philosophy, that they are understanding the emptiness. So when they are studying this and debating, doing this analytical, this critical thinking, and trying to make meaning that what is that, emptiness from the Chittamatra viewpoint. And so they are engaged in this real deep contemplation. You can say it meditation, it's an analytical meditation. And then when as they progress, then they get into the middle way philosophy. And there they're trying to make sense of emptiness, as middle way, the prasangika, this consequence middle way position is very much like the quantum physics, right? There's none of this, like the Zen meditation, that nothing exists just by itself. It has to be understood in the context. You can't say exist, not exist, both, none. In a kind of objective way. None of this. It all transcends. So when they are studying this and to really kind of trying to get to this what it is, and through examining, analyzing, debating, and trying to make meaning. And then so they are, seeing that in these two forms of two classes, two groups. The one that Chinmatra, they haven't yet studied Madhyamika. What kind of differences do you see?
Interesting. Very scientific.
We really need the monastics to do this.
We really need that.
So that's why, like our two science faculty leading this research part, Nicole and Robin,
I'm jealous.
they were just so amazed, when of course they helped them to, how to do research, and they've been studying. But the last year, for the first time, then they did the research, analyzed, and then they were presenting, and then each one of them separately told us, that it's so amazing that this is the most rewarding, the kind of the student learning that in their entire teaching career they have seen.
Goodness.
Like
how can we bring those scholars?
They are coming with the new questions. That it's so innovative. So that's why I think that the Buddhist community around the world, the Korean Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Theravada, we all have so much to offer.
Let's do it together.
Yes, and then world is, that recognizing that, it's because it's the Buddhist tradition, the Buddhist wisdom that is, informing, because the Buddhists have been looking inwards for millennia, right?
Yes.
When science, for last 500 years or so, they focus on external kind of the understanding external world, and they have come up with incredible knowledge in transforming our world, right? That we understand at a very microscopic level, that to understand our health, and then macroscopic level about our universe and galaxies and black holes and all those things, that. But Buddhists were, that they were engaged in understanding the physical world also, because there is the theory about what the physical world is, and it differs in the different kind of levels of schools, it even coming to a point that is very similar to quantum physics, that nothing exists in a fixed by itself, causality, self, time, none of this, space. It is all relative, that all dependently existing and empty of having fixed. But most, focused the Buddhists around in Asia, that this is where it developed and then spread. They spent most energy, most focus was to how this understanding has relevance for our peace, for happiness, to alleviating our like distress you were mentioning, that that this anxiety, the depression, the burnout, or this anger, the hatred, this, how do we transform them and then promote peace, heal, and happiness and so forth. And that's why that Buddhist tradition has a lot to offer to the science, and that's what happened in the last several years.
That's why I think you created and developed the CBCT program. So I think we can talk about the CBCT program now. And could you explain the definition of the compassion or cognitively based program?
So the CBCT, thank you for asking about this question about the CBCT, cognitively based compassion training, right? Again, the compassion, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s in the West, that the many spiritual communities, of course, deeply valued kindness, compassion, love, like the Christianity and other religions, of course, and then other people as well. But the scientific, all philosophers really, like the Immanuel Kant and the many of the, philosophers in the West, they actually had a little bit of a kind of a misunderstanding about compassion. Like when Kant says that, compassion is beautiful, but it's weak. That's the misunderstanding that if you are compassionate, kind to someone, it's a weakness that you can't oppose injustice if they do, abuses and injustices, and therefore it makes you weak. That a lot of people think that compassion makes you like the doormat, right? But that's a totally misunderstanding. Like the Buddhist tradition doesn't think that way. Compassion comes from an inner courage. To someone who is hurt, instead of moving away, running away, that feeling anxious and overwhelmed with that, to reach out to help. That shows inner courage. Compassion comes from a deep sense of inner courage. So therefore, the research in compassion is somewhat recent in the West, even more recent than the mindfulness and research on mindfulness. But what is amazing is that, and then it's I believe this has largely to do the work of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. That as he has been engaging scientists for the last 30-40 years now, encouraging them, kind of making them see what these inner qualities mean, including compassion, and encouraging them to research that. Instead of kind of focusing on research from the negative angle, you have depression, so what is wrong? Encouraging them to do that, but then also research about cultivating what's called the healthy minds, right? The positive qualities, and inspiring people like Richard Davidson, even to establish a center called the Center for Healthy Minds, at Wisconsin.
It's because of His Holiness.
Yes. In 2000, when they they had this Mind and Life conference in Dharamsala, Richie was the one to coordinate that conference on the theme of emotions. He's a neuroscientist studying emotions, right? So there, in the presentation, they're talking about the depression and anxiety and like that, which is very important to understand and how what works. But then His Holiness also, challenged them, including Paul Ekman, who is the expert, when it comes to emotions, the scientific understanding of emotions.
Very important person for Inside Out.
Yes, the Inside Out, this movie Inside Out, he's the kind of the advisor, that it's taking his theory and his student. I mean, he's one of his students, at Stanford also. That they advised this. So Paul Ekman and like that. In 2000, His Holiness asked them you should research also how the healthy state of mind, the compassion, love, forgiveness, how do you cultivate this self-compassion, including, how do you cultivate that? So that's why the His Holiness has a huge role when it comes to, advancing this research on not just in general meditation, but particularly on this healthy mind, kind of focus on including compassion. So that's why if I may give you a little bit of just brief history, how the CBCT, or the Cognitive-Based Compassion Training, was developed. In 2003, at Emory University, the students were struggling with the mental health. We had some suicides, and then a lot of the students were struggling with the mental health, because it's a university, very competitive, like private university. So the students are under great pressure.
Especially the Emory University.
Yeah, at Emory University, that it's competitive, And then in those days, the mental health was, something of a taboo, that if you said that I'm struggling with depression and like that, people would see it negatively, right? There were not many programs. I mean, of course, if they were evolving, but in that context, one of the students who was taking a course with me on Tibetan Buddhism, it's really the Buddhism in general, looking at different models of meditation, mindfulness, compassion, forgiveness, and so forth. This student, Molly Harrington, her name, she was leading an initiative on campus to destigmatize mental health, like that, because she was very, so she was in the president's, council, kind of drawing attention to President Council about the mental health issue. University need to do something about this. And when she was taking this course, she, felt that the elements in this course, meditations, are what the community needs. So she encouraged me to develop a program, and that's what the CBCT, based on His Holiness the Dalai Lama's writing, if in your viewers, if you are interested, I think that books like Ethics for the New Millennium that His Holiness wrote, Art of Happiness, I think particularly written together with Howard Cutler, a psychiatrist, a book that remained over 3 years in the best, New York Times bestseller, really bringing the wisdom of His Holiness to, address today's problems, today's population, like not just in the West, that modernity as it reaches to the East, and we are facing the same problems here as well, rising mental health, suicide, that a lot of depression and all those things. So that was the impetus for kind of the developing cognitive-based compassion training, because the compassion is, if you look at a lot of, really, if you kind of see, there are many conditions promoting mental health issues, but if you look at, it's something that's very kind of the central, that is our, sense of insecurity, that this is where our sense of lack of sense of connection, that, and that's where we don't, as social animals, if we feel alone, it's very threatening. That any little issues become much more stressful. But when we have a sense of connection, we are with others, and like that, we are evolved, to feel safer, like that. So that's why compassion is about building, this meaningful connection with others. And that's why, as you were asking how we define compassion, in the Buddhist tradition, which is fortunately now the research is also kind of showing the same. So there is a kind of the common definition that is emerging, and that is the compassion is this warm-hearted concern, arising from witnessing the suffering, difficulties of others, and when you feel motivated to alleviate that. So compassion, is about seeing the suffering of someone you connect, tenderness, value someone with that, and then seeing that difficulty, you want to help them, alleviate their suffering. So that's what the CBCT is. We started this as a research project, not like just to offer to anyone, but to really to see if you teach compassion, if students practice, whether that will buffer, your kind of for depression and these the chemicals that are kind of correlated with our depression and anxiety, this mental health problem, but also like other organic problems like cancer and heart disease and like that. It's the inflammation in your body. It's a stress. It's a stress reaction. So we studied that with the freshman college students to see if that helps.
So I mean, what would you say is the ultimate goal for people entering into the CBCT program? Because, I mean, you know, compassion is a very key component in building a healthy society. But, I mean, we have to teach compassion because when you say compassion, I mean, there's a lot of different answers to what that meaning may entail to various different individuals from like different backgrounds. So what would you say would be the ultimate goal for CBCT training?
Thank you for the question. Ultimate goal of CBCT, the teaching compassion, is really to promote well-being for the individuals and the greater peace and harmony in the world. So our goal of the center, our center's mission, is to create or work towards a compassionate and ethical world for all. We want to advance a global culture of compassion. When it becomes compassionate way of relating to each other, it becomes a cultural thing. Then our little children will be treated with compassion. Instead of abuses and like that. At the workplace, instead of nasty competition and like that, there will be more of a kind of cooperation, and that builds trust and like that between the husband and wife. That would be the greater degree of trust and the harmony, and there the relationship will flourish, and the children of those in that home would be safer, feel loved, feel grow healthier. So the ultimate goal is to promote happiness for individuals and in the society.
That's wonderful. We really need that program
We need this.
in all over the world.
Yes.
Hence Go Inside Global.
Of
Would
course,
like to
of
bring
course.
that.
Even like Darwin, the father of the evolution of biology, he recognized that observing the species, in the species where there was, his word was sympathy, the compassion, the sympathy. When the sympathy was flourishing in the family or in the species, that those species thrived. Where the sympathy was missing, like that, those species perished.